her marriage to Prince Philip really like? What's the truth behind it?
Harry would be idiotic not to have woken up now to the fact that he's been brainwashed. I mean,
It's a story today that members of the royal family will be wearing mourning coats and medals, not their uniforms.
While Richard Kay explores a little discussed bond, that between the Duke and his daughter-in-law, Princess Diana.
About his wife Meghan Markle and is only staying the marriage for the sake of the children.
And is Meghan Markle trying to copy Princess Diana?
Duke and Duchess of Sussex has been released and already creating headlines and undoubtedly headaches for the royals.
And when might this stage-managed handshake between William and Harry happen if the Prince of Wales...
It's not.
Well, trust had been broken, basically.
Right.
And so I think, as far as, having somebody in the room...
That Harry had to once zip it and not rush out afterwards and give an interview.
The royal couple yesterday, they're not a royal couple anymore, are they? The grifters.
Anyone who loves the royal family or respects the royal family, don't watch this. It's just offensive.
The Queen's final Christmas was supposed to be the one that brought everyone home. Instead, it became the quietest December of her 70-year reign, and the one royal expert Richard Kay would later describe as unbearably poignant. Because by the time she sat down at that small desk in the white drawing room of Windsor Castle on December 23rd, 2021, the woman who had hosted the family for decades was facing something she had never faced before. Her husband of 73 years was gone. Her grandson was thousands of miles away in California. And the Christmas she planned, the one that was supposed to gather them all under one roof, had collapsed weeks earlier. What she did next told the world everything. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe to Royal Archives. The original plan was Sandringham. It always was. For decades, the Queen had boarded the train north a few days before Christmas, settling into the Norfolk estate she privately owned and loved. The Sandringham Christmas had a rhythm: a pre-Christmas family lunch at Windsor, then the migration north, the long walk to church on Christmas morning, the gathering of children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren around tables, groaning with traditional fare. It was the one week of the year when the monarch could simply be a grandmother. But December 2021 wasn't a normal year. The Omicron variant was tearing through the United Kingdom. Cases were doubling in days. And on December 20th, a Buckingham Palace source quietly confirmed to reporters what insiders had feared for weeks. The Queen would not be traveling to Sandringham. She would spend Christmas at Windsor instead. The pre-Christmas family lunch, that warm, sprawling event she had hosted for years, had already been canceled days earlier. The reasoning was practical: too many staff, too many bubbles, too much risk. But the practical decision masked something deeper, because this was the second year in a row the Queen had been forced to cancel her plans, and this time she was doing it alone. Richard Kay, the Daily Mail's senior royal expert who has covered the family for more than 4 decades, has written extensively about what Sandringham meant to the Queen, and what its absence in 2021 would have cost her. He has described Wood Farm, the modest 5-bedroom cottage on the Sandringham estate where Philip retired in 2017, as the one royal home where the Queen felt she could escape the pressures of monarchy and being under the spotlight. The one residence where she might be seen in the kitchen. The one place where royal etiquette didn't follow her through every doorway. And it was there, Kay wrote, that Philip and the Queen liked to reminisce, poring over old family photographs together. He called the image unbearably poignant in light of what came next, because by Christmas 2021, that scene was gone forever. Philip had died on April 9th of that year, just 2 months shy of his 100th birthday. The Queen had spent the months that followed in what aides described as a quiet grief, visiting Sandringham in secret in July, driving around Wood Farm with her racing manager, walking the paths her husband had walked. She had carried herself with the discipline that defined her reign, but the discipline had a cost, and by December, the cost was beginning to show. She had been hospitalized in October. She had pulled out of multiple engagements through November. And as the Christmas season approached, the question hovering over Buckingham Palace was not what gifts would be exchanged or what menus prepared. It was simpler and far more painful. Who would be there? The answer, in the end, was almost no one. Charles and Camilla would join her at Windsor on Christmas Day. William and Catherine would spend Christmas Eve with the Middletons in Berkshire, a long-standing tradition, before traveling to see the Queen. A handful of others would orbit briefly, but the family Christmas the Queen had built her entire reign around had effectively dissolved. And then there was Harry. The Duke of Sussex had not spent Christmas with the family since 2018. After he and Meghan stepped back from royal duties in early 2020, the distance had widened year by year. By December 2021, they were settled in Montecito, California, with Archie and their newborn daughter Lilibet. The great-granddaughter the Queen had only met on one brief visit during the Platinum Jubilee planning. Months earlier, if she had met her at all in person, which remained a matter of quiet dispute, Harry would not be coming home for Christmas. There would be no last-minute reconciliation. No surprise appearance. Nothing. And what the Queen did with that absence is the part royal observers like Kay have circled back to again and again. She sat down on December 23rd at a small wooden desk in the white drawing room. On that desk was a single-frame photograph. Just one. It was a picture of her and Philip taken at their diamond wedding anniversary celebrations at Broadlands in Hampshire, the same estate where they had honeymooned 70 years earlier. No other photos, no grandchildren arranged around her. No children, just the two of them, captured in a quieter moment from 2007. For a monarch who had spent decades carefully curating the family portraits visible during her Christmas broadcasts, the choice was extraordinary. Years earlier, in the 2019 Christmas message, viewers had spotted exactly which family photos were displayed and which were missing. That broadcast had famously omitted any image of Harry, Meghan, and baby Archie, a detail later raised in the book Finding Freedom, where the authors claimed the Sussexes had viewed the omission as a final straw. Palace sources at the time insisted the photos simply reflected the direct line of succession. But in 2021, there was no debate over which family members made the desk and which didn't. There was no line of succession on display. There was no curated arrangement. There was only Philip. The message itself was the most personal Christmas address the Queen had ever delivered. She spoke openly about loss. She acknowledged that Christmas can be hard for those who have lost loved ones, and said that this year especially she understood why. She spoke of her beloved Philip, of the great comfort she had drawn from the tributes to him from around the world, and of what he had brought to her life across more than 7 decades of marriage. Then came the line that would be replayed for years. That mischievous, inquiring twinkle, she said, was as bright at the end as when I first set eyes on him. She continued, "Life, of course, consists of final partings as well as first meetings, and as much as I and my family miss him, I know he would want us to enjoy Christmas." Across the United Kingdom, viewers watched in silence. Across the Commonwealth, the response was the same. It was the Queen as the public had rarely seen her, vulnerable, intimate, raw in a way her broadcasts almost never were. But there was something else in that message that observers noted afterward, something quieter. She acknowledged the 4 new great-grandchildren who had been welcomed into the family that year: August Brooksbank, Lucas Tyndall, Sienna Mapelli-Mozzi, and Lilibet. The mention of Lilibet was the closest the speech came to acknowledging Harry and Meghan. Their daughter's name, chosen in tribute to the Queen herself, was woven gently into the broadcast. But Harry was not named. Meghan was not named. There were no photos of them in the video montage that played alongside the address. The visuals showed working members of the family. A framing, palace sources later confirmed, was deliberate. And whether it was fair or not, one question kept surfacing across social media in the hours and days that followed. What did it mean that the Queen, in the most personal Christmas message of her reign, had room for Philip's twinkle, room for the joy of new births, room for tribute and remembrance, but no visible space for the grandson who had named his daughter after her? Critics were quick to highlight the contrast with the Sussexes' own holiday output. Harry and Meghan released their own Christmas card that same week, featuring the first public photograph of Lilibet. taken by their wedding photographer Alexei Lubomirsky. The card included a warm message about family, about welcoming their daughter to the world, about donations made on behalf of recipients to causes including families being relocated from Afghanistan. It was a polished, professional, deeply curated release. It was also, observers noted, entirely separate from anything happening at Windsor. Across the ocean, the two narratives ran in parallel: a grieving widow at a quiet desk in Windsor, and a young California family presenting their first holiday portrait to the world. Both spoke of family. Inside Windsor, what the Queen did across the rest of that Christmas day was, by her standards, small. She did not attend the Christmas morning church service at St. George's Chapel. Charles and Camilla went without her. Photographs from that morning show the future King and Queen consort walking the path she had walked for decades, but without her at the center. Her absence from the service was noted across the British press by the afternoon. She spent the day at Windsor with Charles and Camilla. There were no grand gatherings, no table of 20, no formal lunch followed by the traditional walk. Just the small core of family who could be there, and the long quiet of a castle in winter. And Wood Farm, the cottage where she and Philip had retreated together, where they had reminisced over old photographs, sat empty up in Norfolk, unreachable that Christmas. Richard Kay's description of that place, of what it had meant to the two of them, took on a heavier weight in the days that followed. The Queen had not just lost a Christmas at Sandringham. She had lost the entire architecture of comfort her late husband had built around her. The broader implications of what happened that December would take time to come into focus. Less than a year later, on September 8th, 2022, the Queen would die at Balmoral. The 2021 Christmas message would turn out to be her final Christmas broadcast. The image of her at that small desk in the white drawing room, alone with a single photograph of Philip, no grandchildren framed beside her, no full family gathered behind the cameras, would become one of the defining visuals of her final year. Royal commentators have returned to that broadcast many times since. Some have framed it as a portrait of dignity. Others, including Kay, have framed it as a portrait of grief held quietly, behind ceremony in the way the Queen had been trained from girlhood to hold everything. But what the Queen did at her final Christmas without Harry was not a single dramatic act. It was a series of quiet choices. She placed one photograph on her desk. She spoke directly about loss. She acknowledged the great-grandchildren without naming the grandson who had given her one of them. She did not go to church on Christmas morning. She did not travel to Sandringham. She did not try to manufacture a reunion that wasn't coming. She simply sat with the absence. And that, the calm, contained, almost unbearable composure of it, is what observers like Kay have spent the years since trying to make sense of, because the Queen was not a woman who advertised her pain. She was not a woman who sent signals. She did her duty, and she protected the institution, and she carried what she carried in silence. But the silences in that 2021 Christmas message were louder than the words. The photographs that weren't on her desk said as much as the one that was. The names she did not speak echoed almost as clearly as the names she did. By the time her coffin was carried into Westminster Abbey 9 months later, Harry would be back on British soil. He would walk behind her hearse in uniform of restored mourning. He would stand beside William in front of the world. And in the days that followed her death, Richard Kay would write that for a moment, the squabbles over uniforms seemed unworthy, the saga over insignia and irrelevance, that grief, briefly, had paused the hostilities. But that pause came too late for the Christmas of 2021. What the Queen did that December was, in the end, what she had always done. She honored her late husband. She fulfilled her duty to the public. She delivered a message of comfort to a country still struggling with the pandemic. She set the framed photograph of Philip exactly where the cameras could see it. And she did not let her composure break, not once, not even for the absences that must have hurt the most. The question royal observers are still asking, the question Richard Kay's commentary has kept alive across years of analysis, is what that final Christmas cost her privately, what she felt when she looked at the empty chairs, what she thought when she watched the Sussexes' Christmas card circulate online, what she said to Charles, or to no one, in the long evening after the cameras were gone. We may never know the answer to any of that. The Queen took most of what she felt with her to Windsor's royal vault. But the Christmas she gave the country in 2021, the single photograph, the words about final partings, the silences where Harry's name might have been, remains one of the most quietly revealing moments of her 70-year reign. And what comes next in this story? The months between that Christmas and her death, the visit Harry would make to Windsor that summer, the conversations that did and didn't happen at Balmoral in her final hours, is where the picture becomes even more complicated, because the absence at her final Christmas was only the beginning of what was coming.